Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're going to be taking you way back in time to explore the story of Atlantis, a legendary island civilization, one that's captured imaginations for centuries.
Hmm.
And you sent us an excerpt from Plato's dialogue Critias,
Yeah.
which, as it turns out, is the only source that we have for this incredible tale.
Right.
So let's dive right in.
Well, the first thing to remember is that even within Critias itself, the story is presented as something that's passed down through generations, starting with Egyptian priests and eventually reaching this Athenian statesman Solon.
Okay.
So think of it kind of like a historical game of telephone, right? There are bound to be some changes and interpretations along the way.
Oh, that's interesting. So we're dealing with layers of storytelling here and potential bias.
Exactly.
Before we get to Atlantis itself, though, Plato spends a lot of time describing the Athenians, who supposedly baffled them.
Right, and these aren't just your typical Athenians. Critias describes them as practically superhumans, divinely guided, skilled in warfare, with both men and women in their ranks, wise, virtuous. I mean, they were the total package.
Whoa, whoa, whoa. Hold on. Women warriors
Mm.
in ancient Athens? That's not something you hear every day.
No, it's definitely a detail that challenges, or a typical picture, of Athenian society.
It does.
And Critias even mentions this statue of the goddess Athena in full armor,
Oh, wow.
symbolizing that virtue was for everyone, regardless of gender.
Huh.
So it's as if Plato is hinting at a society that's more egalitarian than what we usually think of when we think of ancient Greece.
Yeah, it definitely adds another layer to the story. But these super Athenians, they face some serious challenges, right?
Absolutely. Critias describes all these cataclysmic events, earthquakes, floods, you name it, and these events reshaped the land. They left only a skeleton of their former civilization.
Oh, wow.
And this is a detail that's crucial because it helps to explain why. Finding physical evidence of this early Athenian greatness is so difficult.
It's almost like Plato knew that people wouldn't believe him. And he was giving them a reason, like, oh, well, this is why you can't find it.
Exactly. He's anticipating the skepticism of future generations, and he's providing this built-in explanation for the lack of archaeological evidence.
Oh, that's fascinating. So are we ready to meet these Atlanteans?
I think so. Are you ready?
Yeah, let's hear about these mysterious people.
Right. So according to Plato, the island of Atlantis, it wasn't just any random landmass. It was actually created by Poseidon himself,
Whoa.
the god of the sea, as a gift for his beloved, a mortal woman named Plato.
A divine origin story. I mean, that really sets the stage for something special.
It does. Now picture this, okay? A central island surrounded by alternating rings of land and water.
Okay.
2 rings of land and 3 rings of water,
Wow.
all perfectly formed and equidistant from the center.
That's a pretty clear picture.
An incredibly vivid image designed to capture the imagination.
It does. So who were the people who lived on this extraordinary island?
So Poseidon and Plato, they had 5 sets of twin sons,
Wow.
and they divided Atlantis into 10 kingdoms, each ruled by one of these sons, the eldest, Atlas, he gave his name, to both the island and, of course, as you might have guessed, the Atlantic Ocean.
Of course, yes. So we're talking about a civilization with divine lineage, remarkable geography, and this complex system of governance from the very start. But what about their culture? What about their daily life?
Right.
I mean, were they just like a bunch of island-dwelling farmers? Or was there more to it?
Oh, there was so much more to them than that. Atlantis was a land of immense wealth, Critias describes, an abundance of precious metals, including this mysterious metal called orichalcum.
Orichalcum.
Yeah,
I got to be honest, I've never heard of that one.
it's described as being more precious than gold, and it was mined from the earth. Some scholars think it might have been a type of bronze or brass, but we don't know. The exact composition remains a mystery. It's like this lost technology element of the story.
Lost technology. Okay, you've got my attention now. So aside from fancy metals, what else made Atlantis so prosperous?
Their island provided everything they needed: fertile land, abundant food, and a diverse range of animals, even elephants.
Elephants.
Yeah.
That's quite a detail.
It suggests that it was a land of incredible abundance.
It does. And with all of this wealth, they built some amazing things, right?
Oh, absolutely. Magnificent buildings, temples, palaces, harbors. They even had a race course for horses.
A race course. Wow. That's a sign of a pretty sophisticated and leisure-loving society. What about their capital city? What was that like?
Ah, yes. Critias goes into great detail about the capital city. So at its heart, on that central island that we talked about, there was this sacred temple dedicated to Poseidon and Plato. It was inaccessible to ordinary citizens, and it was surrounded by a wall of gold.
Wow. So not only were they advanced, but they were also deeply spiritual. I mean, a temple of gold definitely adds to the mystique.
And inside the temple was this colossal statue of Poseidon driving a chariot, pulled by 6 winged horses, Critias describes it, as so tall that Poseidon's head nearly touched the ivory roof.
Wow. Can you imagine that?
The grandeur.
Yeah. What else did their city have?
They had hot and cold springs, carefully cultivated groves, this intricate canal system, bustling docks filled with merchants. From all over the world, Critias paints a picture of this thriving, cosmopolitan city that was centuries ahead of its time.
So we have this incredibly wealthy and technologically advanced island nation, ruled by the descendants of Poseidon himself. That sounds like a recipe for power and influence.
You hit the nail on the head. Atlantis wasn't just confined to its island. They actually controlled a vast empire that stretched beyond the Pillars of Heracles. That's what the ancient Greeks called the Strait of Gibraltar, and it reached as far as Tyrrhenia,
Okay.
which is modern-day Italy, and even into Egypt.
Wait, so they had a presence in the Mediterranean. That's a bold claim, considering like all the established powers in that region?
It is, and that's why some scholars think that Plato might have been drawing inspiration from some real historical conflicts, maybe exaggerating them a little for dramatic effect.
So even if Atlantis itself is fictional, it could still reflect real historical events and power dynamics.
Exactly, but regardless of whether it's historically accurate, the story definitely suggests that the Atlanteans were a force to be reckoned with. But how did they maintain control over such a vast empire?
Yeah, they must have had a pretty formidable military.
They did. Critias gives us this really detailed breakdown of their forces, and it's impressive. We're talking about an army that included 10,000 chariots,
10,000.
each requiring 2 horses and 2 riders, plus additional troops.
Wow. That's a lot of manpower and logistical coordination.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine. But with all of that power, how did they govern themselves? Was it just a free-for-all among the 10 kings?
So their system of governance, it was surprisingly organized. Each king ruled their own region with significant autonomy, but they were all bound by a set of laws inscribed on a pillar made of, you guessed it, orichalcum.
Orichalcum, again, is like the key to everything in Atlantis. Where was this magical pillar kept?
It was kept right in the middle of the island, at the Temple of Poseidon. Every 5 or 6 years, the kings would gather there to discuss matters of state, make sure everybody was following the laws, and to offer sacrifices to their divine ancestor.
It was like a political summit, a religious ceremony, and a family reunion, all rolled into one.
Exactly.
What a way to maintain order and prevent infighting, right, among such powerful rulers.
Right.
But as we all know, power can be a double-edged sword.
Absolutely, and that's where the story takes a bit of a dark turn.
Uh-oh. I have a bad feeling about this. What happened?
Well, as generations passed, the divine blood of the Atlanteans, it became diluted, and they strayed from their virtuous origins.
Oh, no.
They were consumed by greed. They were consumed by ambition. They lost sight of what made their civilization great.
The classic tale of hubris. It seems like letting success go to your head. Never end well. And I bet the gods noticed this.
Oh, they definitely did. Zeus, the king of the gods, he saw their corruption, and he decided to intervene.
Uh-oh.
He called a meeting with all the other gods at their most sacred dwelling, located at the center of the world, to discuss the fate of Atlantis.
This doesn't sound good. What did Zeus have planned?
And here's the cliffhanger. That's where the text ends.
What?
Plato leaves us hanging, forever wondering what punishment Zeus decided to give to the Atlanteans.
Seriously. Come on, Plato. It does make you want to know more.
It does.
What happened?
And that's one of the reasons that the Atlantis story is so captivating. It sparks our curiosity, and it makes us want to ponder the mysteries of the past.
I know. It's frustrating, like, to be left wondering what happened to this amazing civilization. But I don't know, maybe that's part of the appeal. It kind of invites us to fill in the blanks ourselves.
It does.
And come up with our own interpretations.
Yeah, and I think while the ending, it might be a little frustrating, it's also really important, the fact that Plato chose to leave it unfinished, with Atlantis. Facing this divine judgment, I think it speaks volumes about some of the deeper themes he was trying to explore.
Okay. So what kind of themes are we talking about here?
Well, one of the most prominent ones is this idea of the cyclical nature of civilizations.
Okay.
The Atlanteans, they start out as these virtuous and powerful people,
Right.
but over time, they're corrupted by their own success,
Hmm.
which ultimately leads to their downfall.
Yeah.
It's like this classic cautionary tale about the dangers of hubris
Hmm.
and the idea that even the most brilliant civilizations aren't immune to decline and decay.
It's almost like a warning that power and prosperity don't last forever. And that moral corruption, it can bring down even the greatest civilizations.
Exactly. And it's a message that I think really resonates across time. I mean, how many empires throughout history have risen to these great heights
Right.
only to collapse under the weight of their own ambition and greed?
Yeah, countless. It seems like a recurring theme. So while we don't know exactly how Atlantis met its end, I mean, we can speculate based on the clues that Plato gives us. What are your thoughts on the potential causes of their downfall? Are there any theories that stand out to you?
Well, given Critias's earlier descriptions of earthquakes and floods,
Right?
and knowing that those kinds of events were pretty common in the ancient world,
Mm-hmm.
it's certainly plausible that some kind of cataclysmic natural event played a role. I mean, maybe a massive volcanic eruption, a devastating tsunami, or even some combination of the two
Right.
could have led to the island sinking beneath the waves.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, those events would have been terrifying
Uh-huh.
and incredibly disruptive, especially for a civilization that might not have had the scientific understanding or the technology to predict them or to mitigate them.
Right.
I mean, they probably would have seen it as the wrath of the gods, which fits in perfectly with Plato's narrative of divine punishment.
Exactly. And that brings us back to that central question. Did Atlantis actually exist? Or was it just a really good story? It's a question that has fueled debate and exploration for centuries.
It has, and I bet there are some people who think that it was a real place.
Absolutely. While there's no, conclusive archaeological evidence to prove that Atlantis existed, as Plato described it,
Okay.
there are some really interesting connections to real-world locations and historical events.
Like what?
Well, for example, some scholars point to the Minoan civilization that flourished on the island of Crete during the Bronze Age.
Okay.
Now they were known for their advanced architecture, their seafaring prowess, and their sudden and dramatic collapse
Right.
around 1450 BC, which some believe was caused by a volcanic eruption on the nearby island of Thera, which is modern-day Santorini. Sound familiar?
It does. A powerful island civilization
Uh-huh.
in the Mediterranean
Right.
that gets wiped out by a natural disaster. That's a pretty intriguing parallel to the Atlantis story.
It is, but it's important to remember that these are just theories.
Right.
We don't have any direct evidence linking the Minoans to Atlantis. And even if we did, it wouldn't necessarily prove that Plato's account is entirely factual.
Right.
Remember, he was a philosopher, not a historian.
Right.
And he may have just been taking inspiration from real-world events and then embellishing them to make a more compelling story.
Right. To craft a story that's more allegorical.
Exactly.
It makes sense that a philosopher would use storytelling. It's a way to explore these bigger ideas and moral lessons. Why do you think this story continues to resonate with us today? I mean, why are we still so fascinated by a city that might not have even existed?
I think there are a few reasons for that. On one level, I think the Atlantis story, it taps into our fascination with lost civilizations,
Right.
ancient mysteries, and the possibility that there are still, these secrets out there just waiting to be uncovered. We're just drawn to the unknown, to the idea that there are these hidden chapters in human history just waiting to be revealed.
It speaks to our sense of wonder, doesn't it? And our desire to connect with the past.
Absolutely. But I also think it connects to something a little deeper, which is this sense of anxiety about the fragility of our own civilization. I mean, the story of Atlantis, it serves as this reminder that even the greatest achievements, they can be wiped away in an instant.
Right.
That progress isn't always linear, and that we shouldn't take our own advancements for granted.
Yeah, it's a sobering thought. But I do think that there's also this, glimmer of hope and inspiration embedded in the story.
Hmm.
It suggests that humanity is capable of achieving incredible things,
Uh-huh.
even if those achievements are ultimately fleeting.
Hmm.
It's almost like a call to action, to strive for greatness, to push the boundaries of what's possible, but also at the same time, to be aware of our own limitations.
I agree. I think it's that duality, that cautionary tale, intertwined with the spark of inspiration that makes the Atlantis story so powerful and enduring. It forces us to confront both the potential and the fragility of human endeavor.
Right?
And it reminds us that the pursuit of knowledge and progress, it's a journey
Mm.
that's filled with challenges, but also possibilities.
Yeah. Yeah, it really makes you think that the Atlantis story, it isn't just about a lost city, right? It's also about our relationship with knowledge and how we try to make sense of these mysteries from the past.
That's a great point. I mean, think about how this story has come down to us. We have Plato, who claims to have heard it from Solon,
Right?
who supposedly learned it from some Egyptian priests.
Right.
So it's like this chain of transmission, but it's also a chain with some broken links.
Right.
We don't have the original Egyptian account. We only have Solon's interpretation of it, and then we're relying on Plato's retelling of that interpretation.
Right. It's like you said, that game of telephone
Exactly.
where the message changes as it gets passed along.
Exactly. And that raises some really important questions
Right.
about historical knowledge. I mean, how much can we really trust these accounts that have been passed down through generations? How do we separate fact from fiction, especially when we're dealing with events from so long ago?
It's true. It really highlights the fact that history isn't just this collection of objective facts. It's also a collection of stories
Hmm.
and interpretations
Mm-hmm.
and perspectives,
Yeah.
all shaped by the people who transmit them.
Exactly. And those stories, even if they're not entirely factual, they can be incredibly powerful. I mean, they shape our understanding of the past and they influence how we view the present
Right.
and even the future.
It's true. So where does that leave us with the story of Atlantis? Should we just dismiss it as pure fiction?
Hmm.
Or is there something, something valuable to be gained from exploring it, even if we can never really know for sure whether it was a real place?
I think that there's a lot of value in exploring it, even if Atlantis never actually existed. The way Plato described it, I mean, this story has had a profound impact on our culture and our imagination. Think about all the works of art, literature, films that it's inspired. I mean, it has fueled scientific explorations, and it sparked these debates about history, philosophy,
Right.
and even the nature of humanity itself.
It's true. And, I mean, besides all that, it's just a great story.
It is.
A lost city, advanced technology, divine intervention. I mean, come on. It has all the elements of a captivating myth.
You're right. It speaks to our sense of wonder and our desire to explore the unknown. And, I mean, who knows? Maybe someday we'll find something, some new discovery that will shed light on the origin of this legend,
Right.
Maybe it'll reveal a connection to a real civilization that we haven't uncovered yet.
Right. That would be amazing. I mean, can you imagine?
Yeah.
That would be quite a plot twist. But even if that never happens, I think it's safe to say that the story of Atlantis will continue to fascinate us and inspire us.
Hmm.
It reminds us of the power of storytelling
Uh-huh.
and the enduring mystery of the past.
I think you summed it up perfectly. The journey of exploration is just as important as the destination.
That's a good point. And hey, maybe, just maybe, one of our listeners will uncover their own piece of the Atlantis puzzle someday.
That would be great.
Until then, happy deep diving, everyone.